No moral authority. Foster Cummings isn't in a position to lecture anyone on failing young people. An editorial by Professor Wall Street. Foster Cummings put up a Facebook post with a title that practically dares you to read it. The UNC government is failing our young people. It's the kind of headline that plays well to a base already primed to distrust the other side. There's just one problem with letting a former minister run that line unchallenged. Cummings isn't a neutral observer of youth policy in Trinidad and Tobago. He was, for 4 straight years, the government official literally paid to be in charge of it. Before he lectures the current administration on failing young people, the honest question is the one he'd rather nobody ask. Under his own watch, who was really failing whom? The government that failed the young people is the P&M government from 2015 to 2025, when they had 26.3% of black people living below the poverty line. Furthermore, most of the students scoring below 50% and 30% in the SEA examination were of Afro descent. So who was really failing who? Here are 10 reasons why Foster Cummings has no moral authority to state that the current UNC government is failing young people. 1. He held the actual portfolio. Cummings was Minister of Youth Development and National Service from April 19, 2021 to March 18, 2025, nearly the entire back half of the P&M's 10 years in office. If failing our young people is the charge, he isn't a character witness for the prosecution. He's the defendant who just finished his shift. 2. The exam numbers on his own watch were bad. The Ministry of Education's own analysis of the 2024 secondary entrance assessment, the last full SEA cycle sat before the P&M left office, found that 42.09% of the 18,177 students who sat the exam scored below 50%, and 14.39% scored 30% or below. Those are not opposition talking points. They're the government's own published results, produced on Cummings' watch, in a country that had a cabinet-level Minister of Youth Development the entire time. 3. The failure wasn't a blip, it was the status quo he inherited and left unchanged. Retired UWI education lecturer Dr. Samuel Lochan noted after the 2024 results that Trinidad and Tobago has simply continued the long-term trend of roughly 40% of SEA students scoring below average, a pattern he traced back to at least 2009. A ministry created specifically to develop young people existed for 4 of those years without moving that number in any meaningful way. 4. While in office, his own family collected millions in questionable contracts. Just 12 days before the April 28, 2025 general election, the Housing Development Corporation approved 6 contract extensions worth $15.6 million to 2 companies, Apacal Services Limited and Rivulet Investment Group Limited, led respectively by Cummings' wife and daughter, for waste removal at HDC sites. HDC's own documents show no tender type was recorded and the value exceeded the simplified procurement limit. That is public money that could have gone toward the young people he now claims to champion. 5. His finances were already under formal scrutiny. Cummings faced a 2022 police investigation into his financial dealings, a serving minister under law enforcement inquiry, while holding one of the government's most publicly visible youth-facing portfolios. 6. He couldn't clear his own integrity paperwork. In November 2024, the Integrity Commission issued Cummings a notice for failing to file his required 2023 declarations. A minister
who can't meet the basic transparency obligations of his own office is not well positioned to demand accountability from anyone else's government.
7. He's accused of turning youth-adjacent state hiring into an election machine. His successor has accused him of placing 61 political affiliates on short-term contracts in the run-up to the 2025 election, the kind of patronage hiring that spends public payroll on loyalty rather than on the young people a youth ministry exists to serve.
8. His own talking points show the recycling, not the results. In August 2024, while still minister, Cummings was still running on the claim that the UNC position was to close down all the youth camps, a reference to the 2010-2015 UNC government, a decade earlier, as if a rival's record from 10 years prior were a substitute for his own 4 years of outcomes. When the strongest thing you can say about your record is what the other side did a decade before you took the job, that's not a defense. That's an admission. 9. The young people he claims to champion voted him out. In the April 2025 general election, Cummings lost his own seat in La Jorquera Talparo to a UNC challenger. The community closest to his own record, the one that watched him govern for years, not on Facebook but in person, delivered its verdict directly. 10. The underlying crisis he's invoking is real. He just didn't fix it, and the ethnic framing isn't new. Trinidad and Tobago does have a long documented, geographically concentrated poverty and education gap that disproportionately touches historically Afro-Trinidadian communities in East Port of Spain. Parliament's own No Time to Quit report on young males and Crime Found Cape scholarship winners were overwhelmingly students with Indian surnames and documented dramatic population flight from Laventille as residents fled poverty and stigma. That is a genuine, serious, multi-decade national failure. But it predates the UNC's current term. It predates Cummings. And it sat squarely inside the job description of the ministry he ran for 4 years. If the crisis is as real as his post implies, the fair question isn't, why hasn't the UNC fixed in 1 year what nobody has fixed in decades? It's why the minister, whose title was literally youth development, had 4 years and didn't move the needle either. Not one word about that appeared in his post. In conclusion, so who was really failing whom? Strip away the Facebook headline and look at what's actually on the record. 4 years with youth development in his job title. A final SCA cycle where more than 4 in 10 children couldn't clear the halfway mark, and where the pattern was already 15 years old when he inherited it. Millions in state contracts flowing to his own household in the final days of his government under procurement conditions nobody has been able to explain. A police inquiry into his finances. An integrity commission notice for paperwork he simply didn't file. 61 names added to the public payroll on the eve of an election. And at the end of it, a constituency, his own, that looked at all of that up close and voted him out. That is not the resume of a man withstanding to post about someone else failing young people. It is the resume of a man hoping nobody checks the dates. Here is the test worth applying to every version of this post and every politician who posts one like it. If the person doing the lecturing spent years holding the exact power to fix the thing they're now angry about, and the thing didn't get fixed, the lecture isn't accountability, it's amnesia. Foster Cummings had the ministry, he had the budget, he had 4 years. And the only accounting he's offered since is for someone else's report card, never his own. Who was really failing, whom was never really in question. He just needed the country not to remember